An Introduction to New York State's Social Studies Frameworks for 3rd grade. Hello, I'm Jeff Kresge and I serve as the District Instructional Coach for the Jamestown Public Schools. In an effort to make the New York State frameworks easier to access and to understand, I'll create a series of short videos throughout the year that'll come out once a month on how you can be covering the social studies frameworks in your classroom. A quick glance at the headlines or social media feeds is all the proof that we need that the teaching of social studies is more relevant than ever in today's world. As a society, it would seem that we are lacking in empathy, understanding, and a willingness to even take a bit of time to research things on our own. This is where the teaching of social studies can be a powerful tool, both in your classroom and in the world today. The teaching of social studies aims to create open-minded learners who thoughtfully tackle questions through facts and research, not raw emotion and ill-informed opinion. New York State frameworks have 10 different standards for the teaching of social studies for 3rd grade. There's no requirement as to how or when teachers cover these standards. Likewise, these standards don't have to be taught as a standalone. In fact, I would urge you to integrate them into what you're already doing to make your work even more meaningful. To support your work, I will cover one of the 10 standards in a short video each month during the school year. Again, you don't have to cover this standard in that order or during that month. However, I hope these videos will serve as a guide or reminder that you're on the right track. Here's an overview of all 10 of the standards for 3rd grade found in the New York State Social Studies Framework. I'll use the actual language from the framework and then provide an example question and some topics of study that might help you teach those standards. Standard 1. Geographic regions have unifying characteristics and can be studied using a variety of tools. Example question. How do we determine what's a continent? Topics of study that you might take: continents and oceans, major countries on the continents, maps versus globes, map skills, and a study of satellite images and photographs from areas around the world to identify similarities and differences. Standard 2. The location of world communities can be described using geographic tools and vocabulary. A question we might ask is, how do we use maps or other tools to find a place? Topics of study could be: locate 3 communities of study on the map, or use principal parallels such as the equator, Tropic of Cancer, Tropic of Capricorn, the Arctic Circle, the Antarctic Circle, and the prime meridian to locate 3 communities by hemisphere. Standard 3. Geographic features often influence where people settle and form communities. People adapt to and modify their environment in different ways to meet their needs. A question we could ask our kids is, how does where someone lives affect how they live? Topic of study: for each community we look at, we could take a look at their geographic features, including water, landform, and climate. How have people in the community adapted to or modified these geographic features over time, including modern technology? And using maps and images, how could we determine why people choose to live in some locations and not others? What actions are people taking to protect the environment? Or how has human activity altered the natural environment for better or for worse? Standard 4. Each community or culture has a unique history, including heroic figures, traditions, and holidays. A question we could ask our kids to get at the standard might be, what can we learn about the 3 communities by studying their legends, stories, art, and music? Topics of study could be legends and folktales, music, dance, and art for any community. Standard 5. Communities share cultural similarities and differences across the world. To hit that standard, we could ask, how are communities similar and different around the world? And along those lines, we could choose 3 communities and compare their religions, their languages, their customs, traditions, and their holidays and festivals. Standard 6. Communities from around the world interact with other people and communities to exchange cultural ideas and practices. To hit this standard, we could ask the kids, how has interaction between communities changed the societies? Topics of study could be, choose 3 communities and compare their trade with others, their travel, their goods, their ideas, their foods, and their cultural ideas. Standard 7. Governments and communities and countries around the world have the authority to make and the power to enforce laws. The role of the citizen within these communities or countries varies across different types of governments. We could ask our kids how governments from around the world are different from each other. And topics of study might be the U.S. government and democracy, and how that compares to others from around the world, perhaps theocracies, communist nations, or monarchies. We also could look at the laws created and enforced, and how they keep people safe differently around the world, and what are the roles and rights of citizens in different cultures. Standard 8. The concept of the universal human rights suggests that all people should be treated fairly and should have the opportunity to meet their basic needs. To get at this standard, we could ask our kids, are people treated fairly everywhere? Topics of study might be, do all countries strive for universal human rights? And we could look at prejudice and discrimination around the world over time. We could also look at the steps that people take to support change. Standard 9. Communities meet their needs and wants in a variety of ways, forming the basis for their economy. We could ask our students, how do communities acquire the products that they want? Topics of study might be the natural resources in those communities, explore the idea of surplus and scarcity. We could decide how communities meet the basic needs for food, water, clothing, and shelter, and we could determine how communities have earned a living over time. Standard 10, the final of the 10 standards. Each community develops an economic system that addresses 3 questions. What will be produced? How will it be produced? And who will get what is produced? A question that would hit this standard is, why and how do communities trade? Topics of study might be the concept of supply and demand, the concepts of importing and exporting. We could compare imports and exports for different communities, and we could examine how technology, transportation, and communication have influenced trade over time. Again, these are the 10 standards from the New York State Social Studies frameworks for 3rd grade. It matters not how or when you convey these to your students, but please make every effort to make your lessons fun, challenging, and engaging for your students. And please remember that if you should need any help, lesson ideas, or further explanation on any of the social studies standards, please don't hesitate to contact me at Jeffrey A. Kresge at jpsny.org or by phone at 716-483-4393 or extension 7033. I thank you for the work that you're doing to create the active citizens of tomorrow.